Tashtilek, welcome to Tibet This Week, a weekly feature that tells you about this week's news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Central Tibetan Administration. Let us have a look at the headlines for today. His Holiness the Dalai Lama begins visit to Arunachal Pradesh. As China steps up demolitions at Larung Gar, Tibetan political leader expresses fear of cultural revolution reviving in Tibet. Cultural revolution in Tibet, most anti-cultural in human history, says former Indian Foreign Minister. Swiss parliamentary member completes Dharamshala visit. An update on activities of Overseas Offices of Tibet. On Tuesday this week, His Holiness arrived to a warm welcome in Tenzigang village of Arunachal Pradesh, where thousands braved the rain to welcome the spiritual leader. The state's Chief Minister Pema Khandu, in an interview with the press, said that His Holiness is a religious leader and has a huge number of followers, not only in the state of Arunachal, but in the entire nation and the world. And it is a very good moment for all that His Holiness has finally arrived in the state. His Holiness the Dalai Lama began the visit to the two states of northeast India from Assam's capital Guwahati, where he took part in the concluding program of Platinum Jubilee celebration of Assam Tribune and Golden Jubilee celebration of Dainik Assam. His Holiness was accompanied on the dais by the Honorable Chief Minister Sarbananda Sonowal, Governor of Assam Shri Banwari Lal Purohit, Director of Assam Tribune and other dignitaries. While addressing the event, His Holiness the Dalai Lama called for promotion of human compassion through education and proper use of human intelligence, not through prayers and faith, to achieve the goal of global peace. His Holiness reminisced his escape from Tibet through Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh following Chinese occupation of Tibet in 1959. At Guwahati University, His Holiness talked about the need for ancient Indian knowledge in modern times and inaugurated an Assamese translation of his book, My Land and My People. Later that day, His Holiness took part in Namami Brahmaputra program with the state's Governor, Chief Minister and Director General of the Assam Rifles. At the event, His Holiness had an emotional reunion with one of the 5 Assam Rifle Guards who escorted him to India during his escape from Tibet in March 1959. While addressing more than 1,000 students and faculties of Dibrugarh University this Tuesday, the Nobel laureate sounded worried at the continuing increase in the gap between the poor and the rich and warned that if the present education system continues unchanged, focused largely on material goals, it is sure that the future generations are only interested in money and power. Beginning late March this year, the Chinese authorities have reportedly stepped up the demolition of monastic dwellings and expulsion of monks and nuns of Larung Gar, one of the world's largest centers of Buddhist learning in Tibet. The dismantling of the center, which began in July 2016, was temporarily suspended in December during the winter. Latest reports and video footages emanating out of Tibet have confirmed that the targeted dwellings would be dismantled by the end of April, 5 months prior to the actual September deadline. The order detailed directives to downsize the institute by 5,000 residents, which would mean half the size of its original population. Responding to China's beefing up of demolition work at Larung Gar, the Tibetan political leader Sikyong Dr. Lobsang Sengye said the case of Larung Gar is reminiscent of the bitter experiences of cultural revolution and said that he fears the cultural revolution is reviving in Tibet. On Sunday last week, the Tibet Museum of Department of Information and International Relations, Central Tibetan Administration, in collaboration with India International Center and Bureau of His Holiness the Dalai Lama at Delhi, launched a week-long photo exhibition titled Revisiting the Cultural Revolution in Tibet. Former Indian Foreign and Finance Minister Shri Yashwant Sinha graced the inauguration of photo exhibition as the chief guest. Speaking at the event, Mr. Sinha said,
Humanity, there has never been anything more anti-cultural than the so-called cultural revolution of China.
He also expressed his confidence that the struggle of Tibetan people will not go in vain.
Struggle has carried on, and it's the struggle of the people of Tibet which shows how indomitable the human spirit is. As Mahatma Gandhi said, they might break your limbs, but they will not be able to break your spirit. And that is the spirit which is prompting you to continue your struggle. It's been a long struggle. The people of Tibet have suffered a great deal during these decades, but their struggle must go on.
Secretary of Department of Information and International Relations Dharamshala claimed that the cultural revolution continues to this day in Tibet as evidenced in the case of Larung Gar, but raised hopes in the audience, saying that the cultural resilience of Tibetan people will bring peaceful resolution to the long-standing issue of Tibet through dialogue and reconciliation.
Though what I'm talking about and what you're going to see, the pictures are going to be very grim, but the good news is that for the last 57 years, people inside Tibet have been at the forefront of this important advocacy work, their cultural resilience, peaceful cultural resistance, how they protected their identity, their unflinching faith and loyalty in His Holiness the Dalai Lama, how they consider the Central Tibetan administration as the legitimate representative, and how they continue to tread the path of non-violence. I think this sets a very, very strong angle to the Tibet story and how the Tibet story continues to inspire hope in the rest of the movements.
On Tuesday last week, Sikyong Dr. Lobsang Singye received a 6-member delegation of Swiss parliamentarians at the Kashak Secretariat. Sikyong urged the members of parliament to support Sino-Tibet dialogue based on CTA's middle way policy and called their attention to Tibet's environmental issues as well. The Tibetan political leader also informed that Kashak has declared 2017 as the year of campaign to galvanize the global Tibetan movement to resolve the Tibet issue. The Swiss Parliamentary Group for Tibet held its first press conference presided by Deputy Speaker of Tibetan Parliament in Exile, Acharya Yishe Phuntsok in Dharamshala. During the press conference, the delegation expressed their strong support for dialogue between Beijing and envoys of His Holiness the Dalai Lama for peaceful resolution of Tibetan issue. Let us look at some of the news reports filed by Office of Tibet Brussels and Office of Tibet London. On Friday last week, in a brief ceremony held in the presence of Representative Tashi Phuntsok, Office of Tibet Brussels, Mr. Namgye Samtuk officially took charge of the Secretary of Bureau de Tibet, Paris. On Tuesday last week, the first Swedish-Tibet Friendship Parliamentary Group was formed at the Swedish Parliamentary House by 5 Swedish parliamentarians. That is the end of this week's episode. Thank you for watching Tibet This Week.